So I did want to mention that first. My name is Brian McIntosh, and I'm a member of both ECULINKS Etobicoke and Etobicoke Climate Action, and have been selected to be the moderator from these two groups, and it's my privilege and pleasure to do that. I want to say that our theme for tonight is building a sustainable Ontario for everyone that is equitable, livable, economically competitive, and ready for the future. And we agreed on that together. I also want to acknowledge as we begin the history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of the land of the Indigenous peoples of this region, including the Huron-Wendat, Petun, and Seneca nations, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit, who are Anishinaabe people. This territory that we're in this riding is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant and Agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Ojibwa and allied nations, and we seek to live in respect, peace, and right relations with them as we live, work, and play and vote upon their traditional territory. So welcome again to this evening. I'd like to introduce our candidates tonight and then tell you just a little bit about how we're going to proceed, and then we'll get started. Our Ontario NDP candidate is Farheen Aleem. Welcome, Farheen. It's good to have you with us. Our Ontario Liberal Party candidate is Lee Fairclough. Thank you, Lee, for joining us tonight. And the Green Party of Ontario is represented by Thomas Yanuziello. I hope I got that last name close, Thomas.
Nope.
not at all. Oh, well, you can correct me later. I do want to note that it's my job to kind of keep us on track, but it is my regret to inform you as an audience and the other candidates with us that the Ontario Progressive Conservative candidate for Etobicoke-Lakeshore MP, Christine Hogarth, will not be attending this evening. Since Christine Hogarth is the incumbent, we first approached her in early April, long before the other candidates were approached, offering her to choose from a few dates for this meeting. Receiving no firm response within a 10-day period, we then secured the other candidates rather easily and quickly, and then continued to try and reach the incumbent with repeated invitations. We finally heard back from Ms. Hogarth only a week ago when she informed us that she could not attend due to a stated scheduling conflict. We were very disappointed to hear this, and we'll leave it up to the audience to judge her ability to accommodate this open and democratic meeting in her schedule. That's all I'm going to say about that. But this is a democratic meeting, and it's exposing people to the opinions of the parties and the candidates and the platforms that they carry. We do have 6 preset questions that we'll be asking the candidates, as well as giving them an opportunity to have an opening remark. Note at the bottom of your screen that the Q&A feature is enabled. So we are inviting you to write in your primary questions that you might want to ask the candidates after the preset questions have been put forth and answered. And we'll take the top 1 or 2 upvoted, maybe 3 if we have time, upvoted questions. So there's also an upvote feature where you can vote for the question that seems to speak to your issue. And we'll take the most voted for questions at the end of the evening, unless we already asked a question about that topic. There is no bias in terms of the order of those who are going to answer. I'm going to start with one party and then proceed to the other 2. And then I'll start with somebody else the next time, and so on. Every question will be started by a different person. And it's in that order as we go along, in a cascading order from the beginning. I wanted to introduce our tech team. Cora Dusk, you will see on your screen. She is going to be the timekeeper, and she's going to hold up a green card when the answer begins. And each candidate will have a 3-minute opening and then a 2-minute time for the answering of each question. And so when that starts, it'll be a green card, and then she'll hold up a yellow card when there's about 30 seconds left, and then a red card when time is up. So that gives the candidates a bit of a cue. I'm a preacher, but I know that you'll be able to deal with that. Note as well that Alex Cameron did enable Thomas and my getting in here at the last second by a different way. So thank you, Alex, for your assistance tonight as our tech person. And I think that's it. So what I want to do is to start by offering each of you a 3-minute time to open with an opening statement or a comment. And I'm going to start with the Green Party because that is G in the alphabet. So Thomas, you are first.
Hello, Etobicoke. My name is Thomas Iannuziello. Everyone just calls me Thomas. I know my last name is difficult. I'm your MPP candidate for the Green Party of Ontario. First, let me thank ECULINKS Etobicoke and GreenPAC for hosting this event. And thank you all for coming and allowing me the opportunity to earn your vote. It's a shame that Christine felt that it wasn't worth her time to attend this event and earn your vote. It's shameful behavior. Thank you for Farheen and Lee for the opportunity to debate against you. So you're probably wondering who I am. I'm an ordinary working class Ontarian, born and raised in a small village up north. I now live and work here in Etobicoke as an autonomous vehicle operator. I'm essentially a test pilot, ensuring that the technology can be developed safely on live roads. I don't want much out of life. I don't want to be rich, powerful, or own a yacht. I just want to live in harmony with my ecosystem. I want to live in a carbon zero home that I can afford, whether I own it or rent it. I want to grow and eat my own vegetables. I want to breathe clean air and drink clean water. And I want meaningful employment that will support my lifestyle without compromising my values. But the reality is that none of these options are available to me. I can't control how houses and apartments are constructed or where my heat, hot water, and electricity come from. I can't control the level of air or water pollution in my community or my employer's business practices. Better choices for our individual well-being and the betterment of our communities should not only be available to everyone, but they should be the norm. It's only within the power of the government to make these things happen. Yet I have lived my whole life in this province watching all three of these other parties fail to provide even these basic necessities. And to those of you seeking to get rid of Ford, I want to speak to you directly. Conservatives win when voter turnout is low. Polls are biased. They only reflect the opinions of people who actually respond and deter voters who feel like their vote won't make a difference. Voting strategies try to encourage electors to side against a common enemy, but many will choose not to vote at all if they aren't encouraged to vote for what they believe in. Both polls and voting strategies are counterproductive. Statistics show that they re-elect conservatives more often than unseat them. Our best hope is to engage voters by giving them something to vote for, not against. So I implore all of you to listen to each of our policies and give your support to the party which best represents your interests. Thank you.
Very good, Thomas. Thank you. And Lee of the Liberals, you are next. Your opening comments.
Thank you very much. My name is Lee Fairclough, and I am your Ontario Liberal candidate. Thank you for making time to join this evening. And I'd also like to thank the Etobicoke Climate Action and ECULINKS for organizing this town hall. I'd also like to recognize and thank all the other community partners of this event. It's really the strength of these community organizations and the people that contribute to them that make Etobicoke-Lakeshore the incredibly vibrant and connected community it is. I've lived in this riding and community for over 22 years. My two school age boys attend the schools here. And so thank you. Thank you for what you do to make it better. And our family could not imagine living anywhere else. I would also like to just take a moment to recognize and thank the other candidates here this evening. Democracy only works when people are willing to offer themselves as candidates for public office. And I imagine that we're all keeping the local footwear providers really happy right now as we spend a lot of time knocking on all your doors. Public service comes in many forms. It requires a commitment to the people that we serve. When I started my career in healthcare as a radiation therapist at Princess Margaret Hospital, I had conversations every single day with patients and their loved ones who were grateful for access to treatment in our public health system. Over the last 25 years working in healthcare, including over 15 in executive roles, I've seen firsthand how public policy shapes our society and impacts people. The last few years, though, as the president of a hospital and a lead for the regional pandemic response in our area, have been some of the most challenging we've ever experienced in healthcare. The everyday heroism of frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, doctors, respiratory therapists, PSWs, and others who put themselves in harm's way, especially when the vaccine wasn't available in those first 10 months to care for people. Their commitment to patients was truly inspiring, as has been the many essential workers that have contributed throughout. However, we have seen many troubling decisions by the forward Conservatives that have impacted and eroded our public health system, public education, the environment, affordability, the list goes on. I can't imagine another 4 years like this. I love working in healthcare, but the decision to resign as hospital president to run was one I felt with urgency. My hope is to bring stronger leadership for the people of Etobicoke-Lakeshore as your MPP and at Queen's Park. Climate change is not a siloed environmental issue. It is a healthcare, mental health, food security, economic, seniors, youth, and equity issue. We need all of us to be working together to build a climate safe and resilient society that leaves no one behind. And my values and deep care for people have always driven my decision making. And I look forward to the rich discussion this evening on the policy choices ahead for the next Ontario government. Thank you very much.
Excellent timing. And lastly, Farheen, please, the NDP.
Good evening. My name is Farheen Aleem, and I'm your Ontario NDP candidate for Etobicoke-Lakeshore. I also wanted to thank all of the organizers and participants for attending this debate. It is really what makes democracy work. I also wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself. For those of you who haven't heard my story yet, the day I decided to put my name forward to become Etobicoke-Lakeshore's next MPP was the day one of my students told me that he had lost his sense of taste. I am a high school teacher, and throughout the pandemic, I taught children who were home alone while their parents went to work sorting boxes for Amazon. As their teacher, I watched my students' fears about COVID safety turn into despondency as they accepted that Doug Ford would always put the profits of corporations over protecting their family members. During a check-in, a student seemed off, and he revealed to me that every member of his family had tested positive for COVID. This was before vaccines were readily available, before COVID became normalized as something that we just have to live with. And it was the direct result of government decisions that prioritized profits over people. I've witnessed the depth of unmet needs in our community and the broken model where Ford's cuts to publicly funded services, they've fallen on teachers, frontline workers, and other caregivers who don't have the resources to help vulnerable communities when they need it most. And this has been my motivation to run. I'm a proud resident of Etobicoke-Lakeshore, and I'm also a community organizer. I have been knocking on doors since last year, listening to our neighbors' concerns and meeting them where their political hopes are at. Through listening to people, I've really learned more about the needs of our community, and I've worked to build an authentic and collaborative movement that really responds to our community needs when the government hasn't been there. In the winter, my team and I created resources to help our neighbors access booster shots, high quality masks, and rapid tests when they weren't readily available. I've reached out to community groups like Maybell Arts to connect them with resources that offer pop-up vaccine clinics. I've demonstrated my advocacy for housing issues in our community by helping the tenants living at 25 Maybelle receive media attention when they were facing unfair evictions from their landlords. I've shown up in solidarity with events supporting the Ukrainian community, supporting safer roads and cleaning up our local parks. And you can trust that I will keep doing the work because I've been doing the work. I know that building a better future for our riding is going to take place one door at a time and one conversation at a time. I've put in the work knocking on doors and reaching out. You've heard from me and you will keep hearing from me. And so will Etobicoke Lakeshore until we receive the change that we deserve. Thank you again so much for your time. And once again, I'm Farheen Aleem, your Ontario NDP candidate.
Thank you very, very much. So as I said earlier, there are 6 preset questions that the planning team for this event worked very hard on, and we shared them with the candidates ahead of time. Our first question tonight is the one of 2 on the environment, and this one is on greenhouse gas emissions. It is clear that we are in a climate crisis with heat waves, flooding, other extreme weather events. The IPCC climate scientists have stated that we're on track for a 3-degree Celsius rise in temperature by 2030, which is double the Paris Agreement target of 1.5. We must act, therefore, with urgency. According to the IPCC, humanity has only a short window of opportunity to mitigate the worst effects of our human-created climate crisis. The culprit is the greenhouse gas emissions we produce every day. If elected, what are the measures your government will take to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions, including but not limited to building retrofit, updates to new building code, green transportation, green industry propagation, green cities, and an electrical grid with no greenhouse gas emissions? I'm going to turn first to our second speaker on the first question, which is Lee of the Liberals.
Thank you very much. I could not be prouder to stand with the Ontario Liberal Party in this election. This is the party that closed Ontario's coal plants and a policy that was the single largest reduction of greenhouse gases in North America. This is the party that generated $3 billion from big polluters via the cap and trade program. Even without the lens of climate change, I will never understand why the Ford government left $3 billion of industrial emission revenue on the table, spent taxpayers' dollars to remove EV charging stations already installed, and spent $230 million to serve 758 renewable energy contracts, only to turn around and buy 3 natural gas pump plants. It is disrespectful of taxpayers and treats the environment as a dumping ground that my kids and your kids will have to clean up. I am so proud of this comprehensive climate and environment platform that we have launched. I cannot cover all the details in the 2 minutes, so I'm going to cover a few highlights. We will reduce our climate change causing emissions by half by 2030. We will stop the building of 413. We'll require big polluters to comply with stringent caps on emissions. We'll ban new natural gas plants and phase them out in line with our 2030 target. We'll provide affordable, walk-a-ride, province-wide public transportation across the province until 2024. And we'll invest $375 million in operating funds annually for public transit. We'll support people during this transition too by providing $9,500 in rebates for EVs and EV charging stations, provide 100,000 easily accessible grants of up to $3,000 per year per person to invest in energy efficiency and build climate resiliency in their homes, and to provide $500 for e-bikes and interest-free loans for deeper retrofits. We'll establish new building codes, and we'll mandate climate risk reporting for publicly traded companies, essential if we wish to attract investors to Ontario and in Canada.
Lee,
there is so much more. Thank you. There's so much more that you can find.
Thank you very, very much. I hate to do that, but we have to. We have a limited time tonight. I'm going to turn next to Farheen for an answer to this first question on greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you for your question. I just wanted to agree with the preamble that the climate crisis is the greatest threat that our world faces. I know a lot of families in Etobicoke-Lakeshore come from parts of the world that are already on the front lines of the climate crisis, myself included. Even my family in Bangladesh, they've had firsthand experience with rising sea levels and poor air quality. But these experiences are coming closer to home. And even just last summer, we saw the smoke that came from the wildfires in Northern Ontario came all the way down to where we are in Etobicoke-Lakeshore, which really demonstrates that it is now or never to move towards a climate-ready Ontario. The Ontario NDP has an ambitious and achievable Green New Democratic Deal, which is going to bring Ontario back in line with our Paris Climate Accords by converting our energy into cleaner and greener forms. So for example, transitioning electricity and transforming transportations and our buildings to make them more sustainable. Part of that plan is a retrofit program that will bring buildings to net zero by 2030, creating 100,000 jobs in the green industries and supporting households in achieving more green lifestyles with investments into transit and infrastructure for electric vehicles. But what makes the Green New Democratic Deal really stand out is how it centers the well-being of people who have been traditionally left behind and the climate justice in the changes that we need to avoid the climate disaster. So we will guarantee that any worker impacted by adapting to a green economy is going to have a publicly funded retraining for a good new green job. It won't be threatening their livelihoods. And we're also ensuring that retrofitting, it's not limited to the super wealthy or to new luxury condos, but we're going to make sure that public institutions like co-ops, apartments, and community housing are involved in this retrofitting program as well. So the Green New Democratic Deal is going to reframe our economy into a green economy and really make sure that nobody gets left behind. Thank you. I really was trying to get it in within those 3 minutes.
Thank you, Farheen. You did a good job. Thank you. And Thomas, over to you on this greenhouse gas emissions question.
Thank you. The Green Party's plan is to phase out fossil fuels, move to renewable clean energy sources, increase access to electric vehicles and charging infrastructure, and make buildings energy efficient. We will lead by example and support municipalities to become climate leaders. To phase out fossil fuels, we will establish a carbon budget for the rest of the century and incorporate annual reporting requirements on our progress. Our goal will be to cut carbon pollution in half by 2030 and hit net zero by 2045. Working with the federal government, we will establish border carbon adjustments. We will eliminate fossil fuels from the electricity grid, aiming to phase out fossil gas by 2030 and stop all new fossil fuel infrastructure by 2025. We will double Ontario's electricity supply by 2040 and make it emissions free, and allow homes and businesses to earn credits from their excess energy production, and negotiate to buy or exchange power with neighboring provinces. To ensure our grid runs smoothly, we will add at least 7,500 megawatts of energy storage. We won't build any new uranium mines or nuclear plants, and will shut down the aging Pickering nuclear plant as scheduled or sooner. We will offer cash incentives for buying fully electric vehicles and bikes and phase out the sale of new gas and diesel vehicles by 2030. We will increase the number of fast charging stations at rest stops, and by 2023, we will require all new parking areas to install EV chargers and provide tax incentives for businesses to install them. The PCs killed the new climate economy plan, costing hundreds of millions of dollars in torn up contracts, making pollution and congestion worse. The NDP are voting in favor of Line 5 gas line and are encouraging increased consumption of fossil fuels by subsidizing energy bills rather than incentivizing cutting back on use. If you want a real green action plan, a real green economy, vote for the real thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. We're going to continue on the theme of environment and climate by having a second question, this one on biodiversity. And Farheen, you're going to be first on this question, but let me read it for everyone. Biodiversity loss on an unprecedented scale is being driven by loss of habitat and is exacerbated by urban sprawl, climate change, and pollution. Farmland in Ontario is a precious and irreplaceable source of food in an era of increasing global food scarcity due to desertification, war, droughts, floods, and rising food prices. What measures will your government take, if elected, to limit urban sprawl and ensure the protection of the greenbelt, wetlands, nature corridors, headwaters, and species biodiversity, while preserving Ontario's rich farmland for food production? Farheen, what's your answer to that question?
First, I just want to say I'm so glad that there's a biodiversity question tonight, because our riding specifically has access to some of the most special urban green spaces in Ontario, from all of the parks along Lakeshore to the trails by Mimico Creek, Etobicoke Creek, the Humber River. And with that comes access to unique wildlife and bird life. I myself am an amateur birder, and last fall, when I was planting trees at Sam Smith Park, I was able to meet a local birder named Nancy Barrett, who connected me with resources to teach me more about birding. So before I get into answering the question, I did just want to give a quick shout out to the community leaders that are here doing the work of nurturing people's interest in biodiversity and educating us to preserve our green spaces for future generations. The Ontario NDP, we have made commitments to expanding access to parks and green spaces while also increasing the protection of ecosystems and biodiversity. And this includes supporting projects like the Humber Bay Naturalization and Recreation Plan. Part of our Green New Democratic Deal is planting 1 billion trees by 2030. We are also committed to reversing Ford's destructive changes and cuts to conservation authorities. So an NDP government will reverse the funding cuts and ensure that, that conservation authorities have the tools and the funding they need to enforce environmental regulations. We also really need to fix urban planning in Ontario. The Ontario NDP has been clear in its stance against paving over the Greenbelt to build Highway 413. We can have smart growth with new affordable housing, family-sized units, integrated transit by empowering the city to limit their projects that don't support the services that our communities need. The Ontario Liberals, they brought in the Ontario Municipal Board that allowed limitless construction of unaffordable luxury condos. But we need to focus on zoning laws to make sure that these parts of our community are livable by also building the schools, childcare, libraries, and social supports that make our communities livable. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that you're all using your last breath on each question answer. So thank you for trying to fit it all in. The next person to speak is Thomas.
Thank you. The Green Party is committed to protecting our natural spaces, safeguarding our water sources, using water sustainably, and reducing waste. We will stand strong for environmental justice, strengthen environmental oversight and public consultation, and strengthen animal welfare rules. Restoring the original Endangered Species Act of 2007, we will apply a science-based system for determining species status, recovery, and habitat protection while eliminating exemptions for industry. Proper funding and support will be provided for endangered species recovery efforts and habitat stewardship programs. We will cancel the Species at Risk Conservation Fund, also known as Pay to Slay, that allows businesses to simply offset their harm to biodiversity by paying into the fund. We will protect pollinators by ending the outdoor use of neonicotinoids, and restoring Pesticide Advisory Committee. We will regulate new outdoor lighting to include dark sky protection to protect our migratory birds. 3 times the PCs have tried to develop the Greenbelt, and 3 times the Green Party has stopped them. PCs stripped local conservation authorities of their power and gave the keys to developers' bulldozers through abuse of ministerial zoning orders. For those of you that don't know, MZOs are meant for situations of extraordinary urgency. They remove the appeal process. It's stripping us of our rights to argue against the sprawl. So we need to, The Green Party will freeze urban boundaries and expand infill housing by streamlining zoning to allow for triplexes and quadplexes. We will increase transit options both within communities and between communities. We need new solutions to Ontario's old problems. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Just for those of you who are entering questions in the Q&A, I'm going to share the other topics that we already have on the docket tonight, because some of you are putting in questions that are on housing or poverty, and we're going to have a question about both of those topics. Poverty reduction is next, and then affordable housing. We're also going to have a question about long-term care, and then a sustainable economy and greening of the economy. So those are the 4 remaining questions of the 6 that we had sent to the candidates. Just wanted you to know, those of you who are putting in questions in the Q&A box, because we won't be asking a repeat question about housing or poverty or those other topics. But if there's a clarification that you may need, then you can ask that kind of a question. Anyway, our next question, which Thomas is going to answer first, is about poverty reduction.
Sorry, excuse me, Brian. I didn't get an opportunity to speak to biodiversity.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for interrupting me. Thank you. Go ahead. Go for it.
Thank you very much. So some people might hear the word biodiversity and wonder if that is a nice to have, but maybe not a must have. And it is a must have. And the consequences of biodiversity loss impacts our lives today. There's also a famous quote that the economy is wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. It is becoming clear in very clear, real and tangible ways that the notion that we can pave over farmlands, habitats, forests, and wetlands without any cost to human health, without any cost to our well-being, without any cost to food security or economic security is simply untrue. A Liberal government will end the forward government practices of issuing ministerial zoning orders. MZOs allow the minister to override that local planning authority or any due process to approve developments. The Ford government has issued more MZOs in the last 4 years than had been issued in 1995 to 2018 combined. We will restore the power of local conservation authorities to protect local watersheds, wetlands, and species at risk. We'll stop the 413, invest $10 billion in education and school instead, and in doing so, it will preserve irreplaceable farmland, wetlands that protect us from more frequent and extreme flooding. Our government will designate 30% of our lands as protected areas and create 5 new provincial parks. And it was the Liberals that established the Green Belt, and we will expand it. Nature-based climate solutions will be supported by a $250 million fund to build green roofs and restore wetlands, and farmers will get the support they need to shift to sustainable practices. Our family loves the outdoors here in the riding, but also our favorite holiday is canoe camping and exploring the natural beauty of this province. We need to protect it for so many reasons, and I have confidence our plan will allow us to.
Thank you. And again, I apologize, Lee. That will not happen again tonight. Our next question now is the poverty reduction question. And Thomas, you'll be the first to answer. Poverty, unemployment, low wages, and other chronic and inequitable social and economic conditions have continued to either increase or maintain the gap between rich and poor, and therefore plagued low-income people in Ontario, the pandemic only making the situation worse and exposing pre-existing systemic inequities. People knowledgeable in poverty reduction methods have suggested often in recent years some of the following measures that could be taken, including ending pay inequality for part-time and temporary workers, increasing the incomes of those who rely on Ontario Works and the Ontario Disability Support Program, indexing social assistance rates to the cost of living, moving the minimum wage toward a living wage, instituting a guaranteed livable income, or what some call a guaranteed annual income, ensuring pay equity regardless of gender, race, or immigration status, and legislating more adequate and protected paid sick leave days. Which of these measures or others, and there's a number of them there, will your party take to reduce the poverty gap in Ontario? And please be as specific as you can. Thomas for the Green Party first.
Thank you. All of the above. The Green Party will provide all workers with full and equal access to employment rights and benefits programs like EI, CPP, and WSIB, as well as equal pay for equal work, regardless of whether the employee is permanent, part-time, temporary, or casual. We will double the rates of the Ontario Disability Support Program immediately. We will increase the floor of the minimum wage each year by $1, starting at $16 in 2022, with a top-up in cities where the cost of living is higher. We will implement a basic income to end poverty and homelessness in our province. We will increase the number of provincially legislated paid sick days from 3 to 10 and provide small businesses with financial support to fund the program. The Green Party will prioritize gender equity, fight to eradicate systemic racism, support and improve rights for queer communities, address discrimination in our justice system, and provide equity through language access. I'm glad I get to go first on this question because I want responses on these. All the other parties will keep people with disabilities in poverty by refusing to double monthly payments for the Ontario Disability Support Program. Even the NDP plan will not provide sufficient funding until their second year. Telling people with disabilities to just hang in there while they sign up for medical assistance and dying is absolutely unacceptable. The PCs called frontline health workers heroes while starving them of real wage increases with Bill 124 and are buying votes with short-sighted policies like $1 billion in rebates for license plate stickers that only helps people who own vehicles. The money could be put towards giving our heroes the raises that they deserve, building affordable housing, or improving access to mental health care. As the Minister of Transportation, Stephen Del Duca's riding got 3 new subway stops and others did not. He launched the Unfair Hydro Plan in 2017. Of the estimated $78 billion in subsidies over the next 20 years, only 21% of that will go to low and medium income families. That means almost 80% are going to high income earners. Government's job is to protect the most vulnerable, not the wealthy. Thank you.
Thomas, thank you. Thank you very much. And Lee, you are next on this question of poverty reduction.
Thank you. Poverty and affordability are certainly areas that I've heard frequently about as I've visited so many doors from the residents living here in Etobicoke Lakeshore. I also know from my work at Health Quality Ontario that income status is linked to poorer access to health care and also health outcomes. Never was this inequity and vulnerability more apparent than during the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly those working in environments with no sick pay. Many ended up, sadly, in our ICU in those first waves. Ontario workers are resilient, but the last few years has been an uphill battle against Doug Ford and the Conservatives who froze wages, cut paid sick days, and have been missing in action on workplace safety. We need it to stop. So to be specific, through our affordability pledge and plan for economic dignity, we will increase minimum wage to $16 an hour effective January 1st, 2023, and will help the 300,000 workers that were denied 3 years of increases to their wages. We'll replace the minimum wage with a regional living wage that adjusts for the differences in costs of living, particularly relevant in this area with skyrocketing rises in housing and rental costs. We'll increase ODSP by 20% over 2 years, and Ontario Works by 10% in our first year, and we'll bring back the basic income demonstration pilot immediately. We'll also raise the income threshold before it impacts ODSP to $6,000 per year. And for seniors, we'll increase old age security top up to $1,000 annually for those most in need. We'll provide all workers with 10 paid job protected sick days as well. Our 19-step plan for affordability will wrap with these things and making it easier to live, including those in poverty. A couple examples again, being reducing the cost of transit through Buck a Ride province-wide, and also reducing the tax on prepared foods to under $20, and so much more. Our fully costed plan also finds the offsets for these costs. It's a basket of ways that we will help to support those most in need. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I'm giving all of you about 10 seconds grace, but that's not it. I know it's hard. Our next question is going to be answered first by you.
Oh, I still haven't
no, I'm sorry, I forgot you again, Farheen. You're up next on poverty reduction first. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It happens, I guess. So, I mean, Lee's not the only one. It happens. Okay. So to answer the poverty reduction question, the pandemic exposing the pre-existing inequalities in society and further entrenching them, this has been something that I've witnessed firsthand with my students. In a normal school year, those inequalities might not be as visible, but during the pandemic, when my students were learning from home, I got a lot of insight into their families and the struggles that their family have, because a lot of my students, they're living in multi-generational apartments, meaning like 3 families sharing a 2-bedroom apartment. A lot of them have families that have precarious work and didn't have access to paid sick days. And a lot of them are just newcomers that didn't want to make waves. We know that Doug Ford is not a friend to workers because he canceled a minimum wage increase and froze workers' wages for 3 years. The Liberals had 15 years in power to support workers, and they also only announced a minimum wage raise right before elections, and they refused to give workers adequate paid sick days. The Ontario NDP will raise the minimum wage to $20 over 4 years. We will bring in 2 more rounds of COVID supports for small businesses in need and help them survive the current instability when big box stores were given a leg up above them. And we will also double the ODSP, unlike other parties, and reform it to ensure that no one is forced to live in legislative poverty. We're also going to immediately ensure that everyone in Ontario has access to 10 permanent paid sick days. We also have plans to restart the basic income pilot prematurely canceled by Doug Ford, and we're continuing to weigh innovative approaches to social support. We'll also be reducing poverty by working to tackle the housing crisis, which I will get more into the next question. But we have plans to restore rent control, and that will make life more affordable. I don't want to go over my time. Thank you.
Well, at least you interrupted me in time to get the answer in. So thank you again. And this question is on affordable housing, this next one. We're in the second half of our preset questions. The 4th question, market rent accommodation prices are rising across the city and the province. For example, the average market rent for a bachelor studio apartment in Toronto is just over $1,200 per month, according to the CMHC in 2022. The median rent for a studio is higher at just over $1,500 a month. Individuals who earn the $15 an hour minimum wage for a full 40-hour work week gross only $30,000 annually. An affordable 30% of gross income rent for such individuals would be $748 a month. Individuals on social assistance, such as Ontario Works, who get $8,700, almost $8,800 a year, or Ontario Disability Support Program, who receive just over $14,000 a year, have housing allowances far below this range. And the wait list for subsidized housing is decades long, believe it or not. The housing affordability crisis has meant that many of these households are now clients of food banks in the area. Insufficient income and insufficient affordable rental housing are intersecting to create growing levels of poverty and homelessness in our city. How will your party, if elected, improve rent regulation and housing security for all renters, including those in private rental buildings? Lee, you are first, and I'll try to remember to go to the other 2 after you.
Thanks very much. First, you've certainly summarized an issue that we've heard about frequently here in Etobicoke-Lakeshore. There is no question that some of the arbitrary rent control exemptions put in place these last 4 years have left renters' lives unpredictable and less affordable. I'll also acknowledge that the response to the poverty and affordability question certainly is designed to help address some of the increased cost of living by making more income available to people. However, we also believe that renters deserve more predictability and stability with smaller rent increase. A Liberal government will bring back rent control for all homes across Ontario and ensure renters have predictable rent increases. We'll also provide people with the path to ownership, and create a legal framework that protects renters to opt into rent-to-own agreements, and will also double the pace of home building to help both renters and first-time home builders. We'll put families back at the center of house planning, and we'll double the pace of home building this year, keeping pace until we've built 1.5 million homes. The new Ontario Home Building Corporation will finance and build housing of all types of homes, and the waitlist for social and supportive housing and build affordable homes for first-time buyers. We'll ban new non-resident ownership and tax empty homes, and put a use it or lose it levy on speculators with serviced land and approved building permits. Many of these aspects of our platform are directly related to Etobicoke-Lakeshore, an area that has experienced a lot of development and growth. But also important as we act on this plan will be to ensure that the other services, the schools, transit, healthcare, and other social services will be considered in a way that will continue to keep pace with this growth. Thank you.
Thank you. And Farheen, on affordable housing.
The housing crisis is probably the #1 issue I hear about when I'm knocking at the doors. And for so many people in our riding, rent is unaffordable. A lot of renters, they live in fear and insecurity of being evicted or facing unaffordable rent increases. And it's really important to remember that the devastation of the housing crisis, it's a direct result of decisions made by Liberal and Conservative governments. Doug Ford canceled rent control and inclusionary zoning laws that required big developers to include affordable housing units. And the Liberals created above guideline increases that allow large corporate landlords to neglect their buildings for decades and then hike rents up above the rate of inflation. So that means that a nurse living in an apartment building might have their rent hiked up 10% when their wages are not being hiked up that much. The Ontario NDP has a core belief that housing is a human right. The Ontario NDP, we have a plan to restore rent control, and unlike other parties, we will restore vacancy rent control to ensure that new tenants pay what the old tenants would have paid. We're going to use incentives and regulations to spur the construction of 1.5 million new housing units, and at least 250,000 of them are going to be affordable, non-market rental constructions. So this really just does include not just condos, but different types of housing for different types of needs. So that could mean duplexes, townhouses, single-family homes. We've also made commitments to invest in social housing and end chronic homelessness within 10 years by increasing funding for permanent and traditional housing that is safe and secure. It's really, really important that everybody has a place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Thomas.
Thank you. The Green Party will build 182,000 new permanently affordable community housing rental homes over the next decade, including 60,000 permanent supportive homes. Other initiatives such as mandating inclusionary zoning and a seed fund for co-op housing will also help increase the supply of affordable rental housing. The Green Party will provide security and support for renters by reinstating rent control on all units to regulate rent increases year to year and implement vacancy control to limit rent increases between tenancies. We will extend financial support to 311,000 Ontario households via the portable housing benefit. We will establish a clear system for above guideline rent increases that govern which renovations are necessary and can qualify for an increase in rent. We will update and strengthen sections of the Residential Tenancies Act that deal with the state of repair for multi-unit buildings to ensure tenants have homes that are safe. We will strengthen rules and penalties for renovictions and bad faith evictions to keep apartments affordable. We will increase funding for the Landlord and Tenant Board to hire additional educators, add transparency to the appointment process, and eliminate forced online hearings. This will help address delays so that both landlords and tenants have timely access to justice. The Green Party will restore the goal of ending homelessness in Ontario within 10 years and resume the homelessness census canceled by the Progressive Conservatives. We will utilize a housing first model to ensure that stable permanent housing solutions are the first priority when helping those in need. We will engage communities who have lived experience with homelessness in program development, as well as communities that face disproportionate levels of homelessness, including newcomers and racialized people. All Ontarians should have a home that they can afford in the community where they want to live. Thank you.
I must say you're all doing very, very well and keeping within the relative time limit. Thank you very much. And thank you, Cora, for continuing to keep us on track. The fifth question that we sent to you ahead of time is on long-term care. And during COVID, of course, it was a highly visible issue as our seniors were primarily affected. Although the long-term care COVID-19 Commission, the Auditor General, and numerous other organizations found that for-profit long-term care homes provided poor quality care, the current government is renewing or providing additional licenses for operators of for-profit homes. Recognizing that inspections have been inadequate in the past, how does your party, if elected, intend to ensure that the operators of all long-term care homes implement that mandated 4 hours of direct care, serve high-quality food, provide intellectually stimulating programs instead of television, and hire sufficient physiotherapists and other specialist staff to provide services such as daily ambulation, foot care, counseling, and so on, needed to maintain a high quality of life? Farheen, I'm going to ask you to answer first on this one, long-term care.
Thank you. As much as we've been talking a lot about taking care of future generations, I'm really glad that you asked this question, because it's also a really central part of my culture and so many others to honor our elders. And seniors in our community, they deserve better than what they've been given by conservative and liberal governments, where they're being warehoused into institution-like facilities that are cutting staffing and care in favor of profits. That's shameful. The Ontario NDP is committed to making investments into seniors care that are going to allow people to live at home for longer. And we've also demonstrated time and time again the commitment to overhauling long-term care and bringing in a new public system that's going to give seniors a better quality of life overall. A lot of the terms outlined in this question were already in the Time for Care Act, which the NDP has been fighting for since 2015. And that includes implementing a standard of 4 hours of care per residence immediately. And it's just frustrating, because if Liberals and Conservative MPPs had supported this bill, we wouldn't be seeing the devastation that occurred in long-term care homes during COVID. Our platform's also committed to making sure that long-term care homes are safe places. So that means making sure that every worker, resident, and client has the PPE that they need, putting infection control specialists into homes to make sure that they stay safe. And we're also committed to fixing the labor issues that are really impacting long-term care homes. So that includes making sure that the staff there are well-trained caregivers that have stable jobs and rewarding jobs, and that they can also provide that culturally responsive care that, again, increases seniors' quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Farheen. And Thomas, over to you.
Thank you. The Green Party will create an accountable, non-profit, long-term care system, phasing out for-profit long-term care and no longer licensing new for-profit homes. We will repeal Bill 218, which shields long-term care owners and operators from liability for negligence. We will reinstate annual comprehensive inspections of long-term care homes without advance notice, and ensure homes with infractions face legislative consequences. The Green Party will improve resident care by legislating staffing ratios in long-term care facilities to include sufficient registered nurses, registered practical nurses, and personal support workers to provide adequate care to all residents. We will mandate a minimum of 4 hours of nursing and personal care per resident per day, including care by both an RN and an RPN. We will increase long-term care resident access to allied health professionals such as dietitians, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, and social workers. We will mandate continued professional development for staff, and we will fast-track updated staffing plans and ensure consistency of care by requiring full-time personal support workers and nursing positions. We will prioritize healthy, quality local food as an important component of resident well-being. Let's not forget that the progressive conservatives cut the inspection of long-term care facilities, leading to the deaths of over 4,000 residents during the pandemic. Our elders died dehydrated, malnourished, and alone in heartbreaking and horrifying conditions. The PCs not only didn't fine or pull licenses from a single long-term care home, they instead shielded the homes from liability for their negligence and gave them even more funding. Our elders deserve better. They should remain in their communities, receiving the best home care possible, stay engaged, and offer their breadth of knowledge and experience for the benefit of everyone. Those that require facility care should have it and not be neglected worse than prisoners. Thank you.
Again, very good timing. Thank you. And Lee, the last on long-term care.
Thank you. Long-term care and better care for seniors more generally is an area of care that I care deeply about, and it really needs to improve. I experienced this very directly as well, being required as a hospital president to go in to some devastating outbreaks on management order with our team and to manage the crisis. It was so difficult. It was so difficult for the residents and their families. I expect some of you have experienced it directly. And I also saw frontline staff dedicated to residents doing their best in an untenable situation. But I think for all of us, we knew it was the right thing to do, to go and help. And our staff in hospitals, family physicians, other parts of the community, we work 24/7 to help, and the government provided millions to homes to help to cope and recover. What was very difficult to stomach after all that was the payout of profits and dividends for for-profit homes. It is clear there needs to be a fundamental change. The Liberal plan is calling a plan to revolutionize care for seniors, for our grandparents, our parents, and it's a vision of transformation we need to hold in our minds so that we make sure we act on it. We've tried tweaking at the edges of inspection processes or other quality mechanisms before, and it's just been insufficient. So the Liberal plan will end for-profit long-term care with a target of 2028. This will include no longer renewing or issuing license for for-profit homes and transitioning them to not-for-profit homes. We'll improve the minimum hours of care residents need to at least 4. But let's think more creatively than that about what that care needs to look like. And we'll reward PSWs appropriately for their work with wage increases to $25 an hour. But it needs to be more than that. The model of care needs to recognize that the complexity of care required in long-term care is changing dramatically. I also hear frequently at the door that seniors want to stay at home as long as possible. And we will help 400,000 seniors do that with $2 billion annual investment by 2026. New homes will be less institutional. This is an area of care that must change. And with your support, we will make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last question is about the economy, a relatively general question, but it combines all our interests in social issues that we've talked about, as well as the greening of the economy and so on. In a transition to a green economy for all Ontario, we must provide the training workers need to transition into new green infrastructure and building trades. New zero emissions building codes need to be in place for that to happen. Unemployed and underemployed folks and youth can be trained as apprentices in the skilled trades and be given the opportunity to build our new green lifestyle and economy for everyone in the future. What steps would your government take to fund and create both training and job opportunities while building a stronger green economy for all? And our first respondent is Thomas.
Thank you. The Green Party is committed to ensuring a just and equitable transition. We will train today for the jobs of tomorrow, support and grow green businesses, prepare Ontario industries for the new climate economy, and make Ontario safe and resilient. We will create hundreds of thousands of new jobs by retrofitting 40% of existing homes and workplaces to net zero by 2030 and 100% by 2040. We will modernize the apprenticeship application process to provide candidates with an electronic single entry access. We will increase training opportunities by providing incentives for businesses that participate in training and certification programs in job growth areas such as green building, biomedical technology, renewable energy, and sustainable transportation. We will provide incentives for businesses involved with green retrofits, reforestation, and other forms of green economic activity to provide Ontario youths with valuable job experience. Over the 4 years, we will give 60,000 people the skills and experience to work in the green economy through a year of free tuition, plus a year of guaranteed work when they graduate, with targeted recruitment of women, Indigenous people, and racialized communities. The Green Party will build on Ontario's strengths in mining, innovation, financing, and auto manufacturing to create a strong electric vehicle manufacturing strategy and electric transportation industry supply chain. We will provide incentives for businesses investing in energy efficient and low carbon equipment, buildings, and vehicle fleets. We will redirect existing business support programs to help small and medium-sized businesses scale up or transition to the green economy. The Progressive Conservatives cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars in torn-up contracts and have helped us start transitioning to a green economy 4 years ago. Continuing to resist progress and use taxpayer dollars to subsidize dying, polluting industries is insane. We can't afford to wait any longer. The future of the global economy is green. Ontario is uniquely positioned with resources, connections, and talented innovators to become a global leader in the new green economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Lee, you are next on this question of the green economy.
Thank you. Since the first industrial revolution, society has advanced on the energy provided mostly by fossil fuels. Now we know continuing to use those fossil fuels are an existential threat to the people and places we love, but transitioning the underpinnings of a global economy at this scale will provide opportunities and challenges. One of those challenges is making sure that no one is left behind and that our economy keeps up with the pace of change by retooling our workforce. A Liberal government will invest $9 billion over the next 4 years into building a clean economy. The goal is to create 25,000 green jobs by providing no-cost access to new apprenticeships, training, and skills building programs. And we'll make sure that those programs are accessible to everyone by using an equity lens when we're building those programs. Some of the funding for this program will also come from penalties to industry that are not meeting emission reduction requirements discussed in the first question, and ultimately will be redirected to the 25,000 green jobs. The plan includes also working with Indigenous and Northern communities to reduce the reliance on diesel and drive electrification in the remote North. By committing resources to building skills, taking a deliberate equity lens, and making investment choices, including becoming a green hydrogen powerhouse, establishing the province as a nexus of battery manufacturing in North America, and we'll make investments in nature-based solutions and retrofits, as we've also already discussed. All of these are some of the examples of what we will bring together to ensure a sustainable future.
Thank you very much, Lee. And lastly to you, Farheen, before we turn to our audience for some questions, and I'll try to convey those to our candidates following this answer. Farheen, first on the green economy.
Thank you. So as I've mentioned before, the climate crisis is the greatest threat that our world is facing right now. And the question of a green economy is barely even, it's not a question of if, but when. Like our economy, we can either be dragged kicking and screaming into having a green economy, or we can invest in it and prepare for it now. Because as mentioned, the climate crisis is the greatest threat that our world is facing right now. The Green New Democratic Deal, which I've mentioned a few times tonight, it is envisioning reframing our economy into a green economy by making those investments for future generations and ensuring no one gets left behind. A major employer in our riding is the Ontario Food Terminal on the Queensway, And the NDP plans to create a provincial food strategy that is supporting Ontario farmlands. So not paving over them to build a highway, supporting these farmlands, and also in turn supporting those jobs in agriculture processing that already exist in our communities. In addition to that, we are going to create about 1 million jobs over the lifetime of the plan. So we'll ensure that a transition to a net zero economy creates over 1 million good jobs in Ontario with salaries that people can raise a family on, good government jobs. We're also partnering with labor and industries to ensure that, again, anyone who wants to learn a skilled trade or wants to learn something to help them in the green economy, they will get the education, training, and job placement they'll need. We're also ensuring that, as mentioned, nobody gets left behind. So recruiting and training people from marginalized communities, including communities that sometimes get excluded, such as skilled trades, women, racialized people, Indigenous people, and also working with colleges, unions, and employers to ensure that the next generation of students right now and graduates will be ready to support this green future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we've been monitoring the Q&A. We have, I want to note, we have 160 participants tonight, 158 right at the moment, but we've hit 160, which is fantastic. Thank you for participating in the democratic process in this way. And there's about 48 questions or people who have participated in the Q&A and are upvoting the questions. So I'm really happy about that. I have a 10-second question for you. Are you a resident of the riding? Yes or no? Thomas, you're first.
Yes, I am. I rent here in Etobicoke. I do not own a home.
Lee.
Yes, for 22 years.
Thank you. And Farheen.
Yes, that's an easy question.
Thank you. Let's cover that. That was a good question from some of our audience. An important one, though, is a question that I want to share that a lot of people have tried to upvote. Does your party support proportional representation in Ontario? Would you support a provincial referendum to give Ontarians a chance to choose proportional representation? And Lee, I'm going to go with you first on this one, and you have the normal 2 minutes or less.
Yeah, I believe that our leader, even when he ran for the leadership of the party, ran on some level of reform around ranked ballots specifically. And so I think that we would like to see some adjustment and some reform in that regard so that we could get a more equitable approach to sort of understanding and making sure that those that are elected reflect the wishes of the people. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And Farheen, you are next.
I am really proud and very excited that proportional representation is part of the NDP platform to have a citizens assembly to ensure that proportional representation happens. We know that our current system of one winner takes all is a broken system, and it doesn't accurately reflect the popular vote or people's desires. It requires people to suppress their votes and vote for a party that they see as the lesser of 1 or 2 or 3 evils or whatever it is. I'm really excited that proportional representation's in the NDP platform because, again, it has so many benefits. It creates less divisive societies. We need all types of people to have the world run as it is and to create a better world, and proportional representation will do that because every single person's vote matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Thomas, on the question of proportional representation.
Unequivocally, yes. And I would like to say that the ranked ballot system is not a good enough substitute. It reinforces the two-party system. And shame on you for that. We would absolutely push for a proportional representation system, and I would call on Farheen Aleem, if you do get elected, to pressure the federal system as well. And I would, because the municipal level of government doesn't have parties, I do believe that that might benefit from a ranked ballot system. But as far as the provincial level goes, we need proportional representation. More than 10% of Ontarians voted Green on province-wide scale, and yet we have less than 1% of the seats. and that is not accurate representation of what Ontario wants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's remain civil. This next question is, I think, the last one, and it will lead into your closing comments for our audience because it's a fairly open-ended question. Are there any local issues that are unique to our Etobicoke Lakeshore riding that you are interested in tackling? I think that's an interesting one because it depends on how you know the community that you live in. So, Farheen, I believe you're first.
Okay, so issues that I'm interested in tackling, so many different issues, but I will focus on one specific one in our riding is access to transit, and specifically one corner of the riding, Park Lawn and Lakeshore. We've seen that it's really blown up in terms of density, and past Liberal and Conservative governments haven't given it the transit plan that it deserves. Like previous plans like the waterfront LRT have been canceled, and I am very much committed in terms of supporting a Park Lawn GO station for this corner of the riding because so many people have experienced, I mean, I've been at Etobicoke GO in the morning canvassing to people, but you'll see that it is really mayhem and chaos in terms of the crowds that go there. So our transit system needs better funding. The NDP has a plan to invest more in transit and fund transit better. So transit is a big one. I've said transit a lot in this sentence, but Park Lawn GO. Thank you.
Thank you, Farheen and Thomas, on any local issues that you want to identify and work on.
Etobicoke Lakeshore has a beautiful lakeshore in it. It's in the name. It should be cleaned up. It is full of disgusting plastics polluting our lake. We need that gone, and we need to stop contributing more plastic to it. I'd like to see us on a municipal level at least ban single-use plastics to stop that from happening. I'd like to see refunding of the subway extension between Kipling and the Sherway Gardens to make sure that the businesses that will benefit from that expansion are the ones who pay for it, not taxpayers. And what else? I'd like to see better protection for our species, improving biodiversity in our riding, incorporated into our infrastructure so that we don't focus solely on human use of the land, but all use of the land. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And lastly, Lee.
Thank you. Well, I actually agree with my colleagues here. You know, I think that transit certainly has to be front and center, but I would just broaden it a little. I mean, I think that what we have seen is a lot of growth in different parts of the riding, and we've not always planned for the services that are needed. Transit is definitely part of it, and there's certainly some very significant congestion, and we need to get people on transit. But I do think that schools, and really thinking about, do we have enough schools where advertising people may need to go out of the regions to go to schools? So as we build and grow, let's be sure that those services can keep pace. Finally, we need to get the urgent care center open again at Queensway. And that actually is going to really be at the core of repealing things like Bill 124, really supporting the recovery of our healthcare workforce so that actually there is an interest to open it. We're just unable to staff it at that site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to move into, I think, because it's 8:20 and we want to honor people's commitment for an hour and a half, we're going to move into your closing remarks, and then we're just going to have some closing remarks of our own and urging people to vote and so on. So I'm going to start with you, Thomas, again, and you have, is it 2 minutes that we've given each of you? I think 2 minutes, yes, for your closing remarks and comments. Thomas, you're first.
Thank you. I'd like to thank ECULINKS Etobicoke and GreenPAC again for hosting. I'd like to thank my opponents for attending, except for obviously Christine. And I'd like to thank all the attendees again for the opportunity to earn your votes. The best thing everyone can do for the future of our province is to encourage everyone in your community to vote. Talk to your friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, everyone you know about the issues that matter to you. Then talk to people you don't know. If you if you know or meet anyone who isn't registered to vote, help them register. Any Canadian citizen who has lived in Ontario for at least 5 weeks is eligible, including students from other provinces and homeless. Advanced polls open in 2 days, and your employer must give you 3 hours paid time off from work on June 2nd to go vote, so there is no excuse not to. Make a voting plan in advance and involve other people in your community. If you are going to drive, invite enough people to fill your vehicle and carpool. Make it a group outing that you can all enjoy together. If you know anyone who is homeless or disabled, contact your returning office and make special arrangements for them to vote too. 66% of Canadians want bold action on climate change. Considering that the prairies are dragging that number down, that means that more than 2/3 of you listening right now probably considered voting green, and 2/3 of everyone you know in your communities too. Be loud and proud. Show your support publicly. Use flags, signs, buttons, t-shirts, and engage in conversations to let everyone know that you support climate action. We are the real majority. It's time to take the politics out of politics and vote for the future you want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Lee, you are invited to share your closing remarks.
Thank you to my fellow candidates, the organizers, and participants for the robust discussion tonight. The Ontario Liberal Party has a strong record on climate and environmental action. And as you've heard, we've also got plans to address poverty, economic dignity, housing, and seniors care, including long-term care. Our platform, though, includes so much more, and I certainly invite you to visit it and read it, and also it's included as a fully costed plan. We are in a climate emergency, and we will remain in that emergency for the rest of our lives because of the emissions already in the atmosphere. All emissions avoided matter. Comprehensive and swift action is needed to build that resiliency into our communities in the face of the changing climate. And we have to guard against nihilism as much as we need to guard against disinformation. I respectfully ask for your support today. As your member of provincial parliament, I will bring a lens of climate change across provincial policy decision-making in all the very important areas we covered today. I believe that the role of MPP is one of service to you. Something I've dedicated 25 years to in service to patients in our public health system, and now will take the same care in being accessible and transparent in this broader role. I'll work hard for the representatives and with other levels of government and with the residents and businesses of Etobicoke to bring more awareness to the challenges and build support for action. I ask for your support so we can bring much stronger leadership to Queen's Park to get better decisions that ultimately impact all of us. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you very, very much. And I want to thank our timekeeper, Cora. I want to thank our 3 candidates.
Oh, I didn't do my closing statement. I'm so sorry.
I did it again, didn't I? I did it again. I'm just trying to keep you on your toes, Farheen. That's all.
I mean, I also want to thank Cora. I have really appreciated the folders.
Farheen, I'm so sorry. Go ahead with your closing remarks. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you, everyone who is attending right now, so much for your time in coming tonight. And thank you to the organizers at Etobicoke Climate Action, ECULINKS, for creating this space, which is so central to civic engagement and getting people thinking about the election. For those of you who missed my introduction at the beginning of the town hall, I am a high school teacher, and my jump into politics is because I really do want to do right by my students. It is already difficult to be a teenager and navigate an awkward time in life, but this is made more difficult when your family members are not given paid sick days, or when you can't access affordable housing, or when the climate crisis is threatening your future. And I've seen throughout my experience that even what the best teachers can accomplish in the classroom, it's not enough to address larger systemic issues that are creating these crises. And that really is where my activism emerges from. Those students, they don't deserve to go through this experience while they're growing up. And if we had a government that cared, they would have done more to protect our climate, to keep workers safe, to fix public health and public education, and to build a healthy foundation for the next generation. This election, we have the opportunity to elect leaders like me, who are from our community, understand what life is like in our community, and are going to build up our community instead of extracting from it. This is the best chance that the Ontario NDP has had in over 30 years to form government. We were only 4% behind in the last election, and we only need to flip 10 seats to form government. So if there were ever an election to vote NDP, this is it. I've been knocking on doors and building our movement since December, so you'll notice that this election has a very different energy than Etobicoke-Lakeshore NDP usually has. And I've put in the work, and I really truly believe that together we can fix what matters most. And for more information, my website is farhinaleem.ca. And thank you again so much.
Thank you again. I think we need a new moderator for these conversations. I'm the worst tonight of all of you. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to Cora, and thank you to Alex for keeping us on track and doing the technology so ably tonight. And he has gone to our last few slides, because I do want to thank our 3 candidates who have shown up for tonight and opened themselves to our questions. And we've heard from each of them: Farheen Aleem of the NDP, Lee Fairclough of the Liberals, and Thomas Yanuziello of the Green Party of Ontario. And the next slide says that we were organized for tonight by ECULINKS Etobicoke and Etobicoke Climate Action with support from GreenPAC. And we want to thank those of organizations that were able to support and promote and sponsor as well along with us: LAMP Community Health Center, Daily Bread Food Bank, Lakeshore Affordable Housing Advocacy and Action Group, the Central Etobicoke Community Hub Initiative, and the Humber Valley Village Residents Association. Each of those organizations work hard for our community to make the world a better place where we live, and we thank them for their participation in this way. We urge you all who've joined us tonight to not forget and to exercise your democratic right and fulfill your responsibility as a citizen by voting for the candidate of your choice in this important upcoming election. You can consider to take this survey from GreenPAC by scanning this QR code that's on your screen, and we'll leave it up there for a moment. You can also feel free to contact us at admin@etobicokeclimateaction.ca or at info@eculinks.ca as the 2 organizing groups. And note that we will be, the 2 websites of those 2 organizations will be updated to contain the link to the recorded video of this session, as well as the contact information. So do take note of that. And if you want to share this recording with those who couldn't attend tonight, you're welcome to do so as of tomorrow, I believe. Thank you once again to everyone for attending, and don't forget to vote on or before June 2nd. Thank you very much. There's the survey on your screen, and please fill it out if you can. Thank you very much to our candidates, and all the best in your campaigning.
I'll just also say thank you, and then I'm just going to leave the webinar running for a few minutes so that people who want to vote on the poll can do that. And if you'd like to stick around and we can chat, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll bid you all adieu, and I'll clean up the technical mess.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate tonight and the opportunity to engage with the community this way. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Alex, is there something we need to discuss about tomorrow in terms of joining?
Yeah, there is. But let's wait until we get off the webinar to have that discussion. There's still about 60 members of the public here, so we'll just defer that for a minute.